Hi, Nikki. I ended up writing my reflection as a typed Google document, but I realized, as usual, I wrote way too much. And I know you mentioned not loving reading, so I figured I would record myself explaining it as well. This might just be an easier way for you to view it and give you an overview without getting into too much detail. So we'll go through this. I did the equity path for this week's module. And when I took the quiz, I actually did better than I thought I would. I scored a 6 out of 10, but a lot of it was guessing just based on things that I hear in the news and things that I see from my readings. And so I still didn't do as well as I think I probably should have. Going through my own personal background with equity, I come from a very privileged background, and I know how blessed and how lucky I am to say that. I have been misinformed on quite a few of these items because of that background. My main upbringing, I come from an economically advantaged area. It's primarily a white area. My family is middle class. I have never had any family members go to prison or even jail. I don't have any family members who identify as LGBTQ plus. Um, Everybody in my family works full time. Everybody in my family has had some form of higher education. So just a very privileged background and lifestyle. And because of that, I have made a lot of assumptions, I think, throughout my life. Most of what I have been learning has either been coming from the news or it comes just from taking classes like this and reading different things. And also my students' backgrounds has opened my mind a lot as well. It does break my heart as I go through the quiz and see the results. Just the idea is that, like, um, I knew there is a wage gap, but I didn't realize how significant it was depending on gender and race. That kind of shocked me. I knew that women made less money. I didn't realize how much less. So looking at that really disappointed me. It also makes me sad that students will report incidents of homophobia and get no response. I That just floored me. I was like, that can't be a thing, and it is. Um, Also, like, people not getting calls back for their jobs just based on names. That shocked me, and I didn't realize that still happens in the workforce. So I had a lot of misperceptions, I think, until I took the quiz, and it was disappointing to see some of that. So talking through my information gathering, like I said, a lot of my information comes from news sources. If not news sources, like I mentioned, it'll be coming from college classes or professional development, different pieces like that. Oftentimes when I watch the news, I'm a huge like Lester Holt, NBC Nightly News person. I will watch a little bit of Fox and CNN to try to get a blend and a balance there a little bit. A lot of times, though, for me, it ends up being information overload and it just gets to be way too much. So a lot of the times when I'm going through news stuff, I end up actually searching for online articles and then try to find different sources to not confirm my beliefs, but make sure that I'm getting the least biased topic possible or least biased perspective. Um, Thinking about like economic injustice, my typical reaction is always sadness. Like thinking of the news recently, those 3 Palestine students who were shot point blank, that just makes me really sad. And when I hear it, usually I'll end up doing some research and figuring out what exactly happened. Typically, after these types of incidents, I try to reflect and think about how I can make my environment as safe as possible, especially within my classroom. I want to make my professional practice as welcoming and open as possible, depending on the situation. For example, a few years back, there was a school district in Minnesota where a student posted a racist proposal that really sparked a lot of fire, I will say. It was something that wasn't addressed right away by the school district until it made headline news, and once it did, then the students were suspended, and my students had a pretty big reaction to that, especially because it specifically targeted the Black community, and so I had a lot of students who were coming to class very upset after seeing that, and we have open discussions then. We talked about the message in my classes, we talked about, the implications of it and just how it made others feel. And I want to make sure my students feel like their voices are heard and that we see everybody and everybody matters. So that's a big thing within my classes, especially because I know that I am coming from a privileged background. I know that I don't have a lot of experience with just a lot of pieces in the world. So I really try to empathize with my students and try to make my environment as open and safe for them as possible. Like I said, my understanding definitely comes from my worldview, living a very privileged life. But I also benefit from being a highly empathetic person and really trying to see like where my students are coming from, why are they feeling the way they feel, and trying to put myself in their shoes as much as possible. And I think I sometimes do that to a fault, but I don't think that's a bad thing because I do believe my students feel safe in my classroom. Misinformation, we see how easily that spreads and leads to stereotyping. I will give a big example of this one. In my world literature class, I teach A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Bea, and it takes place in Sierra Leone. It is about the Civil War that happened in the 1990s. And when we read this book, students' minds are just blown because we look at Sierra Leone, we do some similar stories like Michelle Chiquinine and look at like Liberia, and students are just like, wait, Africa has that many countries? Wait, they live in houses like we do, and it's just mind-blowing to them the entire time through. And you see those stereotypes come out. And I know they come from the news and from the media and advertisements, but also just from former history books and the things that we're being taught as students. And now those are finally starting to change, but it took a long time. So my goal as a teacher is just to open that door for students and just allow them to see another perspective and see the truth of how others are living, other cultures, other people outside of our community, and try to give them as broad of a worldview as possible. Equity and UDL are hand in hand. While they are different, they're embedded within each other. I really liked this point from Indar's article where she said, if UDL is implemented with efficacy, improvement, and instructional access should result in equitable outcomes. So as long as you're implementing UDL well, equitable outcomes should be coming through. And we know that UDL needs to be seamlessly like embedded into the curriculum. It can't be like you're really like just, oh, I'm in through this and this and this. It should be embedded and it should flow seamlessly and be just a part of it. But to do that, you have to be intentional to start out. And we know that it's not just a big jump right away. It's starting with small pieces that are easy changes that embed easily into the curriculum. I think through doing this, we can make sure that it is becoming equitable for students. My favorite analogy with equity was always, and this I learned in undergrad, was that equality is giving every student the exact same thing. Equity is giving students the resources they need to be on the same level playing field. And that always stuck with me. And I make sure that I have students in class who are getting the resources they need to be on the same level playing field as the other classmates. And that is equitable. I have a Spanish speaking student this term. She just moved from Mexico in May. So she is really new to our district and really new to English speaking. And so as she's learning everything we do in class, I make sure, like watching videos, we have Spanish translations on. I make sure that she has text to speech just automatically available to her. She'll usually have her headphones in. When I'm lecturing, she'll be playing her phone and like oftentimes translating me as I'm speaking. Every presentation, every PowerPoint, every like assignment, she's able to translate into Spanish. And it's nothing different for any of the other students. It's still the same curriculum. She just has those extra tools that help her feel supported in my class. And so that's a huge thing for me with UDL mixed with equity. It's giving students the tools they need to be successful and different representation, different expression, different engagement all across the board, but making it equitable. Cultural variability in high school English, same kind of thing. I mean, I have so many different levels of students and I want to make sure they have the resources they need. I mentioned my Spanish speaking student, but I also do have many IEPs in one of my classes right now. I have different sexual orientations. I have different races, just a lot going on in that class. And for the variation piece, I make sure students have as much as they need to be successful with the curriculum, no matter what level they're at. I do have students who choose to use text to speech for everything and voice to text. I do allow the students to help me make our classroom norms and like how are we going to treat each other and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And we do that all within the first 2 weeks. So a lot of different moving pieces, but trying to make it UDL based while also making it equitable and making sure everybody feels comfortable in the environment. It's a huge thing. My resources come from a couple of different places. My biggest one was I really like Cult of Pedagogy, and I also really like Edutopia. And Katie Novak, as you know, she's awesome. Former professor, superintendent. She writes a lot about UDL and equity and how the two blend together. And so my resources kind of come from her, where I could read all of her books, and I have read one of her UDL books before, and it's fabulous. But I just found a couple of articles for this one specifically where it blends UDL as a key to equity and just talks about adding the differentiation, but there's a difference between differentiation and UDL and how you like fit all of that within it. The Edutopia articles talk about promoting equity within our schools, and one of them comes from Katie Novak. The other one is coming from, I'm trying to think of what his name is, last name Joseph. But 9 ways to promote equity in our schools, super, super simple. So talking about like removing late work policies and not giving zeros, removing prerequisites to honors courses, simple things. And Chisago has finally picked those up. So I don't have too many reflections, just not to throw UDL in too crazy, like take it one step at a time, but slowly start embedding it. And hopefully as you embed it, it just becomes more equitable as you go. It's got to be intentional, but it also has to flow seamlessly into the classroom environment. So that is what I've got. If you have questions, let me know. Sorry, this video is probably too long too, but definitely reach out with questions and enjoy your weekend. Bye.